Welcome to today's episode. And today we are talking about transformative life and career success journey with Coach Emma Mathews. It's a great privilege to have you listen today. Today is a very special time because we are speaking with somebody who has been in your shoes, somebody who's been a professional person, somebody who has been a high flying career professional, and now who has taken it all and gone into areas of leadership, has gone into area of management, and is right now a coach, helping people just like you from around the world. And I would like to invite my coach, Shilpa Joshi, to introduce in very specific detail our guest of the day, our special guest, Emma Mathews. Coach
Thank you.
Shilpa,
Thank
take
you.
it away.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gerald, and warm welcome our audience, our viewers for LeadTalk Podcast and LeadTalk TV. Thank you for all the support and all the encouragement you have shown us, and that inspires us to do more and more. Having said that, it's my great privilege to welcome our special guest, Emma Mathews. Emma, we are very grateful to have you here, and I take a privilege to introduce you to our audience. Though the introduction can never be enough because her work is louder than her intro, right? So Emma Mathews is a burnout and stress specialist, high performance coach, mentor, and hypnotherapist. She had a long, high flying career in financial service world, reaching senior positions in which she worked alongside the C-suite of large multinational organizations. On paper, she had it all, but inside there was a different story, and I personally correlate with her story. She experienced severe burnout in 2017 and felt like the bottom had fallen out of her world. Through Emma's experiences with burnout, she realized how many gaps there are in the system, both in prevention and recovery, and she decided to train in the modalities that help her to come out of on the other side and reach the best yet, the next level. She is on a mission now from 5 years from a peak of her burnout. She's now on a mission to help as many people as possible to defeat burnout and create their best lives. Currently, she's a qualified coach, therapeutic coach, hypnotherapist, mentor, helping clients and corporates around the world manage stress, prevent burnout, and collapse time on burnout recovery so that they can accomplish their desired goal and live the life they deserve. I'm going to just read out some of her accomplishments because there are many more. She is a qualified and certified quantum life and success coach. She's associated certificate coach with International Coaching Federation. She's a certified clinical hypnotherapist. She's a certified neuro-linguistic programming practitioner and also certified quantum group coaching facilitator. She's also certified in emotional freedom technique practitioners. And also, Emma is halfway through the master's levels of qualification in psychotherapy. So, having said that, I want to start asking some questions which are deep in my mind as well. And I'm taking some questions from you, audience, as well. But I want to tell you that currently now she's located with a family in UK, and her quote of the week is mesmerizing. She says, "You are enough and you are worthy." If we just remember these two lines, I think the life can start changing today. So today's focus of this podcast is about transformative life and career success journey with Emma Mathews, from being burnt out, exhausted professional to being a successful coach, mentor, and a business owner. And my dear viewers and audience, if you stick till very end, Emma will share with you some of the key lessons of the burnout, how to defeat burnout, and she has a very special gift for you. She has prepared a special guide for our audience, which is your guide to beating burnout. I must be very obliged to say you, Emma, this is a beautiful gift, even for me and Dr. Gerald, because we are part of the system as well. and we will provide the link at the end of our episode. So, Emma, now to you, warm welcome again. And let's start me by asking you, tell us about your life journey in brief.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here today. And it's really interesting, actually, when someone talks about your bio and your certifications and things. It was quite an interesting thing for me to hear, just to think actually how much life has changed in a relatively short period. So thank you for that. I guess my life story in brief. Wow, that's a big question. So I was relatively academic at school from a young age. I was the kid who always put pressure on myself to succeed. School was important to me, but I felt there was this big gap in me really knowing what I wanted to do with my life. And the older that I got in the educational system, the more I became really conscious that lots of my friends knew what they wanted to do and they were heading towards something, and I didn't have that thing for myself. So I was in a school that was very focused in getting the top grades, getting to a top UK university. And I followed that path, took direction on what subjects to take, found myself reading economics at university, literally because I looked at league tables of earnings potential after university. I thought, if I don't know what I want to do, I may as well be well paid for it. So yeah,
So true.
not the best strategy in hindsight, but anyway, read economics, found myself on a banking graduate scheme with a big global bank, just because I thought, well, it's one of those careers that people talk about, go be a banker. It's seen as a professional good career. And I just thought, wow, at some point I'm going to figure out what my passion is. And then I found myself over a decade later at senior levels in a bank, burning out, and I still hadn't figured out what my passion was. But almost from that, what at the time felt like the worst thing that had ever happened to me, that was the moment that I actually properly went on the path to find out what I was put on the planet to do. So the last 5 years since have been a complete change. And yeah, if you'd have told me 5 years ago where I'd be today, I would not have believed you for any money.
Yes.
Oh, I know.
Wow,
Pretty
that's
interesting.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
so
very,
amazing.
very interesting. And just saying that if we asked you this same question 5 years ago, it would not kind of give us the same answer. And so what exactly helped you to shift this gear in life? Because it looks like you had this career and then you have this career. So like complete opposite, if you like. So what happened? Yes.
Absolutely. So if we go back to just before burnout, I had progressed up the ranks in 2 different banks. I'd also had a stint in the insurance industry in between. And I was working my way to the C-suite, basically, because I am that high achiever that's always looking for the next thing. And when you're in a big global organization, the hierarchy seems to make sense as the way to achieve success.
Yes.
And then I had a role where I worked alongside the group chief executive and the executive committee of a global bank. And it was the role that I think ruined my corporate career, because I suddenly was sat in the rooms where they were making the strategic decisions, sat with the people whose roles I thought that's what I want to do one day. And I realized I didn't. And really that was the point that I started waking up with this narrative around, is this what life is really about? And I knew that I wasn't happy, but I couldn't see other alternatives, because I had spent so long down a particular career path, reached a certain level of financial success, and I was scared, didn't know how to start again. So I just continued progressing where I was, keeping my head down. But it's part of what led to severe burnout for me. So almost in my case, I made the transition because where I was just became untenable. I became very sick because I was living and working in a way that was so out of alignment with who I was, what my values were. So I was always someone that really cared about my friends and family. But I was working in an environment where I was working all the time. And if I wasn't physically in the office, it still took up all of my mental space. So I was moving further and further away from the things that were important to me. So then, as Shilpa said beautifully in the introduction, the bottom fell out of my world. And suddenly I was forced to find another way because there was no way back to where I had been. It was clear that that just wasn't right for me.
Wow, that's pretty like hair raising almost. I can see you deeply committed to your family, to your friends, but you find yourself working in an environment where the work is all over you, right? In your mind, everywhere. You kind of were working with the work around you. And so normally in life, there's what we call on this show the lead talk moment, where you decide to say enough is enough. Can you look back at that moment where you said, this is my lead talk moment? I'm not going to go this way again. I'm going to chart a new life for myself. Can you take us through that?
Yeah. So if we go back in time, September 2017 when I had the moment that I call my kind of volcanic eruption of burnout. I had what I know now was a panic attack in the office, but at the time I thought I was having a heart attack. I was dying. And then I was off sick for many months after that. I didn't realize for some time what was happening to me. But the longer I was off with burnout, and in those days not getting the specialist support that I needed to really process what had happened, I had this inner knowing within me that going back to what I'd been doing before was not going to result in a good result, because common sense tells us if nothing's changed, you're going to get the same result again. So that was the point that I knew I couldn't go back to that life unless suddenly I had this complete personality transplant and was someone who could suddenly put boundaries in that environment that I hadn't been able to do before. So that was the moment that I thought, I need to create a working environment for myself whilst I'm still recovering.
Oh, beautiful. Wow. So knowing that you went through this very painful and yet transformative experience, what would you say are the key lessons you learned when you started this journey of becoming a new person?
Yeah, I think a big one was, if I look at who I was just before burnout in banking, I just disconnected with my needs as a person and feelings. So I became this corporate robot. And something that I've really realized is actually really understanding who you are as a person and what you want from life is everything. Because I just disconnected with that. I disconnected with all of my hopes and my dreams, just as I got focused on what the business needed from me. So the thing I've really gone deep on in the last 5 years is understanding who I am, what's important to me in life, and finding ways to live and work that's congruent to that, rather than trying to fit myself into other people's boxes. And one of the reasons I created my own business was because I knew at that point I needed to completely create my own environment, because any sense of going into someone else's box was going to hinder that process of self-discovery that I'd only just started.
Brilliant. I like that. And so, because as you know, as a coach yourself, for every action, there must be a mindset shift, right? So in your case, when you're making this journey, what was the mindset shift that helped you move that direction?
Oh, so many. So I think towards the end of my corporate career, I was living by a set of rules that I just took as that's the way life is. This is what's possible for me. And probably the biggest shift that I made in when I went into entrepreneurship was actually just deciding that anything is possible. And there's no limits unless I decide to put them on myself, which was a huge shift. because when you're working in a hierarchy, there's ways to do things, there's processes, and there's rules that are ingrained in you from the culture you grew up in, who you spend time with. And I think really when I discovered the personal development world in 2018, it really helped me see that there's limitless possibilities, and actually the work we do on our own mindset is critical. Yeah, I'd never even thought about it before.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Yes, I love that. This is really good.
Wow.
Just the transformation, starting with the mind. And one of the things I really like, Emma, about your experience is that something that could have ended your career, you did not allow this to do. And so you use this as a pedestal to begin something anew. And this is something that led to your work. And Coach Shilpa is going to ask you a couple of questions really for you to educate our listeners more how you turned this experience and became a burnout specialist. So Shilpa, take it away.
Yeah. Thank you. Before starting on that, Emma, I just want to tell you how deeply impactful your story is. And so many people, the listeners, are going to hugely benefit it because you shared your personal experience. Because many of them, I'm sure, are going through that. Just few months back, I was going through the same, and everybody kept telling me, oh, this is normal, this is natural. Just take 1 or 2 days leave and you will be fine. And I'm glad that even I listened to my inner calling, and I'm so deeply inspired by what you told, that yes, you have to accept that things need to change, and you went for a self-recovery, self-discovery, and personal development. So about burnout, I want to understand so much more. Is that what, according to you, because you have studied it in depth, is what exactly is a burnout, and what are the key reasons working professionals and business owners experience burnout?
Yeah, such a good question. And it's interesting. There's the official view, and there's what I have come to find in my own work.
Yes.
So if I start with the official definition, burnout didn't actually become a recognized term until 2019. So when I was going through it, I didn't necessarily come across that word burnout for about, 4 or 5 months. It was only in May 2019 that the World Health Organization recognized it as an occupational phenomenon, they call it. So they don't see it as a health condition, it's an occupational phenomenon. And so the literature sees it very much as workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. So they describe 3 key symptoms with it. So you feel completely depleted. I think exhaustion's a better word. You feel distant from your job mentally. So you might be thinking quite negatively, cynically, and you notice that you are not performing as effectively. So they call it reduced personal efficacy. And actually, when that definition came out, it was hugely validating that this experience that so many people had was beginning to be recognized. But what I tend to find is actually just seeing burnout in the constructs of the workplace is quite limiting, because we are all in this much bigger ecosystem that's a home life, that's responsibilities outside of work. And what I find is burnout is more just when the overall stress load of that has been too high for too long. And traditionally, it seems to hit those people who are those high achievers. They're ambitious, they really care about other people, and they just push themselves beyond limits that other people would put in there, and just realize it's sensible to stop there. It's almost like there is no sense of self in the process. We're just pushing through because there's that job still to do.
Yeah. And
so I guess if we look at reasons why people burn out, the literature will tell us it's about kind of it's stress in the workplace, but it also can be that picture of there's difficulties at home compounded by stress at work. And there's that sense of if we think of, I don't know, life has been a bucket, stress is going in, there's just not enough holes that are releasing that stress. And then when you've been in that chronic stress state for too long, you enter the crisis of burnout. I truly believe that it happens when you live in a way that's completely out of alignment with who you are, what your needs are for an extended period of time. And how that can look in the workplace is it can be excessive workload. It can be, I don't have a values alignment with the people I'm working with.
Yes.
Can be, I'm not fairly rewarded. There's lots of factors that go well beyond workload, but workload tends to be the one that people associate with it most. So yeah, there can be a multitude of reasons. And as you say, Shilpa, it's not something that you kind of have a day, even a week, sometimes even a month off and recover from, because it is that I'm completely mentally, physically exhausted. There is, by the time it happened to me, I couldn't even get out of bed. And yeah, I hadn't realized what I was heading towards until I was at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, because going beyond the defined state of burnout, there are so many factors which are contributing to this burnout, and it collectively creates that burnout position. It's not that one thing over the other. And I'm also glad that you have modified that definition to make it more inclusive. It's not just work, it's how you are handling your personal life alongside with the work, and how we have unending expectations from ourselves as well. So that's even makes a lot of difference. So having said that, what would you think that there are early warning signals of burnout so people can turn around at the right time and not take them to the extremes?
Yeah, I think the most helpful thing is having a practice where you are checking in with yourself mentally and physically. So for that to work, you need to have a sense of what is my happy, healthy, normal state to check against. And I just hadn't been in touch with myself for so long that I missed all of these signs. I just discounted them. So if I share my specifics, probably the earliest warning sign with me was this mental state of, is this all there is? Kind of, am I going to be living like this for the rest of my life, and feeling deeply saddened about that? That was the first sign with me. Then I started to get stomach pains, which I just thought was a unrelated digestive issue. Then my shoulders were locking up and I was having some physio for that, and my neck. Then my head started to get a bit woolly, and it was all things that separately could have been a physical thing, but actually the total picture was, here is a person who is in chronic stress. And I think the challenge is quite often people will go to see a medical professional for one of their symptoms. And because, I don't know, it varies around the world, but if I use the UK as an example, GPs have very limited time with patients. There's people are not joining those dots and seeing that picture of, we've got a brewing problem with chronic stress. And the symptoms look different in different people. So I've had some people who became very emotional early on, and that was unusual for them. Had another client whose hair started to fall out, their nails were breaking, it was very physical for them. Someone else who noticed that they were very quick to anger in the office. They'd always been that person who'd been very helpful, wanted to help their colleagues, but it was, they couldn't take anymore, and every bit of work they were snapping, they were seeing red. So the main thing, I think, is knowing yourself, knowing what's normal, and being very aware of when something physical, mental starts to shift. The earlier you spot it, the easier it is to do something about it.
Beautiful.
Wow, beautiful. This is so deep, because when people start associating this and going deep, rather than just treating the symptoms, because your mind and your emotions are speaking through your body sometimes when you're trying to suppress them, maybe. So that's so beautiful example. And thank you for sharing that, because the people who are experiencing it and disregarding it as normal, I think this is the right waking time for them. So what are the fallouts if people keep ignoring the signs of burnout because they still want to earn money, don't want to show that they are falling apart and they are stronger, and they want to be still recognized as a peak performer and continue through the grind? So what could be the fallouts if they ignore?
Yeah, it can get really serious. So typically our body gives us warning signs. Initially, they're quite quiet, they're quite subtle. Then they become louder and louder. So in my case, they got super loud. I had a huge panic attack in the office, and I never went back to the office after that day. It was almost like that last moment in the office became some trauma that I had to work through. I've also known people that kind of collapse. They find themselves waking up in A&E. I've worked with people who've had to have a stomach surgery where they've lived in that state of chronic stress for so long, it started impacting their organs. In the most severe cases, there is a link between severe burnout that escalates to depression and actually suicidal ideation and suicide. So it's incredibly serious.
Yeah.
And it's great that awareness is rising with burnout, but I think one of the risks is people can throw that word around quite lightly. But it's an incredibly serious thing that the longer it escalates, the more serious it becomes.
Yeah, that's very critical, because if we don't realize that, we keep ignoring that, thinking that it's going to be all right on its own, then maybe we are being disrespectful to our own selves, right? So absolutely. So what are the 3 myths now, since, as you said, that this term came out little later in 2018 and 19, and you discovered this word little late, but now it has been spoken about. So what along with that, are there some myths created around this word? So what are the 3 myths about the burnout you have heard and you want to debunk?
Oh, there's so many. So a good myth to debunk is that it's a sign of weakness. It only happens to people who can't deal with stress. What I know from the research, my own experience, my own practice in this is it typically happens to the people who are the highest performers in the team, who've really cared about people, and they've actually been incredibly resilient to stress, and they have pushed themselves for too long. I remember my psychiatrist saying to me, the majority of people couldn't have worked like that for that long. You've actually pushed yourself beyond some physical human limits. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, because at the time I was feeling weak and like a failure. So that would be a big one. Another one we've touched on is that sense of good night's sleep, a weekend, a week off is going to fix it. Actually, when we get to that point of burnout, you're in a crisis state, and with specialist support you can turn it around in months typically, but still today most people don't have the holistic support to come back from it quickly. So we're talking extended absence from their careers. What would I pick as the third one? I guess that sense of, it's common when people experience burnout to associate it with life being over. I've had the peak of my career and now I'm just going to have to settle. I can't cope with things anymore. Actually, one of the things that I say is, yes, we want to prevent burnout at all costs, but if you find yourself in the position that it's happened, you can actually use it as that pivot point for best yet.
Yes.
Because done well, the recovery support gets you thinking about those big questions about who am I, what do I want from life? And then I guess I'm the living proof of what's possible when you start that line of questioning.
Beautiful.
Wow, that's so beautiful, because yes, absolutely. Where we may say we definitely do not want a burnout, but if it is happening, maybe it's an indication that now you start turning your life around and start achieving what you really here are for. And that's so beautiful, Emma. Thank you. And what would be the top 3 ways? Now we know that what is the visible or invisible enemy we have. So what are the 3 ways you help people defeat burnout when they reach out to you?
Yeah, so someone who is at that point that they identify as having experienced burnout, typically they will have been through a medical process to get physically checked out. That's always the first step, because we just want to make sure that there's not a physical reason that's beyond kind of a stress response going on there. So then when they come to work with me, it depends what they already have in place. So, for example, if I look at my US clients, quite often they will have a therapist that they're working with within their state, and then I'm there very much in a coaching capacity. Whereas in the UK, I tend to, with clients here, I'm quite often more the hybrid therapeutic coach for them. But typically the work that we're doing is, first of all, let's understand why burnout happened. And this is really deep work. Yes, there's the kind of, there's research that shows the 6 factors at work that can cause burnout. But typically what this looks like is understanding what the environmental factors were. So what was going on at home, what was going on at work. And in that environment, what was it about your personality that then created that perfect storm for burnout? And it's when we look at the personality, the how I'm wired piece, that this work goes quite deep. So, for example, using me as an example, some of the traits, the habits that led to burnout, I can relate back to when I was events that happened when I was 5, when I was 7, to really move on from burnout for the long term. We need to go deep with this work. Yeah. And then there becomes the decision point. Now I've got this information. What do I want to change in both pieces? And typically it's really big conversations around, what do I want from life? So many of my clients will change careers. I do have a few that actually the answer was, I love what I do and I just need better boundaries and I need more support at home. But for most people, there's a career transition off the back of it. Yeah. And then the hypnotherapy piece is super interesting. So what I found in my own journey and from early work with clients was, it can be really easy to default back to old patterns. So actually, if we use the power of the subconscious mind, the piece that is where our values, our habits lie, and rewire that to what you have decided you want in life, you're much likely to be that happy, healthy, sustainable, long-term performing person, versus as soon as you're tested again in an environment, you're defaulting to the old patterns that contributed to burnout. So it's a long answer.
Yeah, but long, but so meaningful, because then our audience can understand it is a deep rooted symptom. So we need to go really deep to, take it out from the ground and the roots and treat even the seed cause, what is causing it, rather than doing some superficial discussion around it and trying to move on very quickly, right? So once you heal that, gather what is happening inside you, recognize the patterns and replace them with the more concrete positive ones, I think that's when the things start changing on the, apart from the roots, in the stems and the fruits, right? So I think the deep answer was very necessary for all of us, Emma. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, that shows your expertise and the deep research you have done on a burnout. And having said that, I also realize and acknowledge that you have become an incredible leader after this whole phase and tried, shifting the world around you, and you have amazing leadership skills. So Dr. Gerald would like to ask you some questions on your leadership skills. Over to you, Dr. Gerald.
Absolutely. I just love the fact that you could, in a very short time, piece different pieces to really get to the bottom of something that is potentially life-wrecking and yet life transformation. It transforms and it could wreck. And really using your own personal experience to see how you can turn around this experience to something that builds anew is incredible. I would just like to add my voice to Coach Shilpad and say, well, thank you. You're doing a great job. Now, talking about the leadership, because this transformation couldn't be possible if you were not good with personal leadership. And so one of the things, as you went through this journey, would like to learn from you is, how has your leadership skill changed over the years when you went through this journey, where you look at yourself, a new perspective, and now that you're helping clients from from across the Atlantic and stuff like that. Just tell us a little bit the leadership transformation you had to go through.
Yeah, good question. So if I think about the leader that I was in the corporate world, I always really cared about my team, empowered them, supported them. I think the gap that I had at that point was actually learning to be my full self and to be vulnerable. So back in those days, I was the person who had the answer to every question. I was always okay. And it was actually probably because I didn't reach out for support and let more people in was one of the contributing factors to burnout.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that actually being in that position where I could barely look after myself for a period of time taught me was the importance of being in touch with our emotions, feeling things rather than repressing things, actually being vulnerable, asking for help. I needed to learn that lesson. Mm-hmm. And I think as a result now, it's much easier for me to empathize with other people, to create spaces where they can talk about emotions, because I've gone there myself now. I've done that. And that still continue to do and will do for the rest of my life, that work where you peel back the layers and it's painful, but you get the insights. So there's been a huge, I think, shift probably in emotional intelligence would be the easiest way to describe that. And then in my journey of business leadership, my business has evolved over the last 5 years, and I've learned through making mistakes. It's I think particularly when you run your own business, there's no one blueprint for doing it. So you get the mentorship, you do the courses, but you only really learn when you act. Some things work, you celebrate them. Some things don't go so well. People always surprise you. So then you just kind of, what is the lesson in this? So yeah, being much more okay with things not being perfect has been a big part of the journey for me.
I like that, being okay with things not being okay, and
Wow.
that's kind of like transcending to the next level, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, there's always a next level, and yeah, just looking at who you surround yourself with as well. So that's, I found when I left the corporate world, it was kind of, what are the communities, the masterminds that for this phase in my entrepreneurial journey are right for me, and then noticing how those communities have changed over time as I've evolved, as my business has evolved as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I see a coach, I see a business person growing and gathering good people around her, and then using this experience to go to the next level. Now, obviously, that's very nice. We all make mistakes, and some things you mentioned a little while ago is that you found some things never worked. What are some of these mistakes you made as a leader as you are transiting from corporate to now being business owner?
Yeah, if I look at the first phase of my entrepreneurial journey, I think the world that was familiar to me was the kind of more masculine culture, the rules, there's ways of doing things. And I guess the people that I was learning from in the entrepreneurial world in those days were closer to that corporate culture that I'd left. So I found in those days I was still very focused on kind of the more material side of things, certain views of success. And then it wasn't until I had a kind of experience of it feeling like burnout was going to come back that I really did the deeper work on, what is my life purpose? What is this all about? What is my real mission? And that was when I discovered the work around that actually I needed to stop ignoring this voice in my head that was, I need to do something in the burnout space. So, and we see this a lot with people that have experienced burnout. Until you do that full depth of work, you're quite likely to relapse because just not enough has changed. So yeah, I definitely had that moment where I realized I'd been chasing the wrong things, even though there were lots of good things in the environment that I was in. It wasn't until I really was super honest about the work that was meaningful to me and what success really looked like in life, that the next level of change started to happen for me.
Beautiful. You're saying something in a subtle way, that one of the things that really helped you to defeat burnout was discovering your purpose. And knowing that, what would be this one thing you would want to tell your younger self? Younger self being the younger Emma, but also younger professionals who probably are in this same journey that you've just beautifully described. What would that be message? What would that message be?
I think just give yourself permission to explore. I think so many people feel that kind of post-university, you need to decide on this thing that you do for the rest of your life. But actually, life can be a wonderful adventure, and we change through everything that we go through. So I have no doubt that the business I'm running today is going to look very different when I look back in 5 years' time. I think the more that we can see life as this constant evolution and growth, rather than I've found my thing and I have to rigidly stick at it, that seems to work better, particularly for people who are those high achievers who I tend to work with. And I think there is something else around how you look at your goals and aspirations. So I was very much focused on, this is where I want to get to. All of my attention was here. And then at the point I achieve things, I didn't take a moment to breathe. My head was already in the next thing. What I've realized now is actually I can desire this stuff while being deeply grateful and happy where I am. And that's a better energy for me.
Yeah.
Wow. I just like the fact that you are telling your younger self to be more flexible, to celebrate what is present rather than sticking the head to the next phase. And I know right now, because of this incredible experience, you're helping people with burnout strategies, defeating burnout, and really helping people come out. I would like you to talk to Shilpa a little bit on some of these things. So Shilpa, take it away and let Emma
sure.
tell us more.
Yeah, I'm just flown in the conversation. The beautiful message coming from Emma. That's very apt message for young professionals, because we don't give our permission to explore. We want to be on the right path all the time and being right all the time, and that puts so much pressure on us. We don't give a chance to explore. So that's beautiful, Emma. I saw your beautiful website, and I'll encourage our audience to go. We are giving all the social media, reach out, and your contacts there. So your message to the world is defeat burnout, stress, and anxiety. You're enough, you're worthy. What was the reason you chose this unique message?
Yeah, I guess it was from initially my own lived experience that I think so much of that focus on kind of achievement came from a sense of not feeling as I was today was enough. And it led to this deep dissatisfaction, because nothing about life was ever good enough. Even though I wasn't an incredibly negative person, there was just always this sense of where I am right now isn't good enough. Whereas I find now a much healthier energy is I'm completely grateful for where I am right now, without emotionally bypassing myself. Yes, there are tough things that I'm allowed to get upset about, but actually I can have desires for the future without it taking away from the now. So the sense of I'm enough and it's only going to get better is the energy that I have in my business. The best days are still to come, and today's terrific.
Wow, that's beautiful. So reconciling the past, not denying it, and taking the learnings ahead, so as to assure yourself that you're enough, you're worthy, and what's coming ahead is also going to be a beautiful journey. That's such a positive vibe out there, Emma. And what are the 3 things you'll recommend to our working professionals and business owners so they can lead their life and career with more ease and more joy? What could be those 3 things they need to do?
So I am a big believer in having a space where you can reflect. So one of the reasons I think so many top executives, high performance sports people have coaches is it's because it's that space to reflect, to think big, to have someone ask you powerful questions. And so few people have that. So I know I will always have a coach because just the importance of having that self-reflection time that nothing gets in the way of. So if it's possible within their environment, it's something I highly recommend investing in. If it's not something that people feel able to invest in personally, have that conversation with their company. Because, for example, many companies hire me as a specialist to come in and work one-on-one with some of their teams. So that's incredibly important. That practice around checking in with yourself is really important, whether that looks like meditation for you or some form of journaling practice, just where you reflect, you give yourself some time to dream. I think that's incredibly important. And also just, so speaking to the type of person who typically ends up coming to work with me, just don't be so hard on yourself. Really recognize all of your successes. Because life is difficult enough without making our inner world compound on top of that.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I'm glad that you mentioned the word coach and a mentor and somebody asking you these powerful questions, because their importance is undeniable. And I also feel that the words you said, if somebody's saying that to you, don't be hard on yourself. I think that changes a lot in our life sometimes. And we take a breather to recognize where we are, appreciate, and take a pause sometime rather than in a mad rush to run all the time to prove that I'm doing great, right? So that's amazing. So over to you, Dr. Gerald, because we want to know about the influence and coaches and mentors.
Yes, beautiful. And I just like the fact that you mentioned that one decision you've made is that you will always stay around coaches, right?
Yeah.
And so in your case, whom would you say are some of the most influential mentors that helped you to navigate this journey of success?
Yeah, I've had so many different ones, both in terms of, I guess, so for example, at the moment, I am partway through a master's in psychotherapy. And I've learned so much from Carl Rogers, who is that person that kind of taught me the importance of seeing the person, almost forgetting all the tools, focus on the person. So he's been a big influence on me. When it comes to my work with hypnotherapy, Marissa Peer is where I first started training, learned about the power of the subconscious mind. When I was first setting up my business, the first person I listened to who helped me understand personal development was Dan Locke. So I found myself in a sales training program, but really what I was learning was mindset work for the first time, the power of the mind. When it comes to how to run a business in an aligned way, I've learned so much from Melanie Ann Leah, who created a super successful business without any of the structures that people tell you have to have. So almost that permission to you be you and trust that the right people will come, which was the complete opposite to the kind of more masculine world that I first listened to when I got into entrepreneurship. And there are countless others, but the main thing I've learned is in all of that space, use it as inspiration, but you do you. Don't let anyone change who you are, tell you how it has to be done. Really, the work, I think, of having a business that you love, that's got longevity, is finding your way to do it.
Wow.
Beautiful, beautiful. And this takes me to something that I know is very close to you, and that's about the book you're working on right now. I know there's the book that you would like to get to the world, and just talk to us a little bit about at least the 3 key messages that you'd like the audience to know about, and then also where can they find this book?
So I was part of a collaborative title that was published, I think it was last summer actually, where I had the opportunity to work with a group of amazing women who'd all had huge transformations in different areas of life. And we got the opportunity to be in a book called Women of Influence. And I knew I'd always wanted to write a book. And actually, part of my recovery process from burnout, I started writing
a book.
Yeah, it was just initially meant for me to help me process what had happened. And so that book opportunity that I had gave me the opportunity to just write a chapter about my experiences with burnout. And really the message that I wanted to give was, actually, it's not game over, it's not life over. This is just the start of something better. Because I remember when I was Googling, when I figured out that burnout was what I was experiencing back in 2017, 2018, there was nothing out there about real people who'd experienced it. Things have changed now, but actually just hearing other people's stories and seeing the evidence of what is possible post burnout is incredible. And I'm sure one day I'll publish the whole thing. And as part of my psychotherapy masters, I'm going to do a dissertation around how burnout is kind of dealt with, because there's so many gaps in the system at the moment. If you're lucky, you might see a doctor who might sign you off for a bit, and then people expect you to be fine. But we know recovery is a much more active process than that.
I like that, and that brings me to yet something very special, because just listening to you, the wealth of knowledge tells me that you absolutely are kind of a superpower in this area. So what would you think are really the things over the years you've learned in terms of competence, in terms of the skills that separates you from others who are still in this space, but may not be as effective in helping others? What are these things that separate you from the rest?
Yeah, and it's interesting how I view the, I guess, burnout prevention and recovery industry. From my perspective, it's still way too small. So I actually celebrate every single person that I see who's doing any work in this space, because it's such a huge issue, and so few people get proper support. So I guess everyone who has their business does it in a unique way. The new unique thing for me was, because I didn't have that equivalent of me to work with when I was going through burnout recovery, I found out all the gaps based on things that set back my recovery or where I had problems, and then tried so many different things in those moments. And the things that worked, I then got qualified in myself, and I've brought them holistically together in one practice, which from what I see is quite unusual. Most people will be a therapist who's not specialized in this space, or someone might work with a burnout coach, but as soon as there's a block, they may not have yet had the training to do the deeper work and the kind of the work on the subconscious mind. So and this journey is not going to stop for me. So I'm doing the psychotherapy pathway at the moment. There will be the next thing after that, and then I need to figure out how to get the methods that I've created out there on a wider basis as well. So there's lots of work to do.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Wonderful.
And
Yes.
that's really the deep work and the deep knowledge. That is what I think differentiates you from everybody else. And you are still learning, you're still going deeper, so that you can offer support to every single person. And with Dr. Gerald's permission, I would like to move to the next question, is that you partially answered that, Emma, is that what are you going to do now so that you feel now you're going to the next level of your significance? So what is that next level for you, Emma?
Yeah, so my practice very much started as one-on-one work, which I love. I find it's deeply transformative for people working one-on-one. But the hesitation I always had was my impact was limited, because there's only so many slots in the week for one-on-one clients. So what I started doing this year was put in specific pieces into masterclasses that were more accessible. So that has been huge, and then and is only going to grow. So I like to break this content down into bite-sized chunks, because I think particularly when you've experienced burnout, there's just so much overwhelm. You do it piece by piece. But then also doing a lot of work on the prevention side. So I now spend a lot of time with companies coming in, educating them on how to spot the warning signs of burnout, how to manage stress effectively, which is incredibly valuable. And then looking at, in my business, bringing in more kind of group coaching forums as well. And one day, as I mentioned, finding a way to, I guess, the knowledge that I've built, what I know works with lots of people, how to get that out in the world to more professionals who want to do this work. I don't have the answer for that yet, but it seems selfish to keep that knowledge, and not the right thing to do.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because then so many people are waiting out there, and you reaching to them, scaling up your zone of influence and impact is going to help multitude of people. Absolutely. So before I move to the rapid fire, Emma, one question I want to ask you is that, what is that question we failed to ask you, but you wanted to answer?
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness, that's such a good question. Yeah, I think I sneakily got the answer in, but it was the kind of, why do so many people relapse with burnout? I think that's that was a key point. So I made the point around, typically people get support that is only one teeny tiny piece of the puzzle. So for anyone who is listening to this and identifies as having burnout, really take that seriously. The kind of holistic work that's to be done.
To go deep, right? Yeah. Beautiful.
Wow, thank you. Because then you highlighted the word relapse. So we are giving the link below to reach out to you. Any particular thing you want to tell audience if they want to reach out to you? Any particular method you want them to reach out to you?
The easiest place to start, if you kind of don't have a specific link to any of my channels, is just my email address, emma@defeatburnout.com. So either or one of my team will get back in touch from that and point you in the right direction.
Sure.
Thank you. Sure. And we'll put that also in the episodes. It becomes easy for them to locate and reach out to you. I'm sure they would take advantage of that. Now, some rapid fire questions, like a shortest one. So are you ready for that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Emma. So Emma, what's your most embarrassing moment?
Oh my goodness, my most embarrassing moment. Good question. What immediately comes to mind for me was my first day of university. I went to Durham University in the UK, and there was this place where everyone gathered kind of between lectures, and I tripped over as I was coming out of the door of this particular academic building in front of thousands of people. It's like, hello, I have arrived.
Wow. What one thing you love about being a coach or a mentor?
Oh, it's really difficult to describe, but it is that sense of doing my life's work. And I never had this feeling with work that I was doing in other kind of corporates and things. Even though there were moments I enjoyed it, it's different when you found what your passion is, that you're good at, that the world needs. And I think there's that Japanese concept of ikigai, which I've probably mispronounced, but I have found mine, and it
wow,
amazing.
Congratulations for finding your ikigai. That's fantastic. So Emma, what are your top 3 values?
Top 3 values. Definitely family is a big one for me. Kind of impact is another one. So this sense of wanting to leave the world better than I came into it. And it's interesting, actually, one that's emerged in more recent years is having fun. I was always so serious, and just missed out on so many things. And now fun is like a huge element of the work I do. So with one-on-one clients, when they're in the pits of burnout, actually it's incredibly powerful to create that space that we can have fun while we're doing this deep work.
Yeah.
And that's where it generally feels a bit different to people who've had a more traditional therapy experience, where it's a bit of fun. I think it's
deep
good.
and heavy. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
What is that you simply cannot tolerate, Emma?
What can I not tolerate? Good question. What's coming up is, I know I couldn't go back to the kind of environments that I used to work in. So I don't have the tolerance for working in that way anymore. I think once you've had your own business, it's almost like there's this whole way of being that you just don't even know how to do anymore. So I'm not very tolerant of being told what to do.
Wow, that's
like
good.
That. That's a nice
and you don't have to. And the good news is that you don't have to. Okay. So one thing you wish you knew Emma in your 20s.
One thing I wish I knew in my 20s. Oh, good question. That I didn't have to have it all figured out. So I think I was still beating myself up, trying to be perfect and trying to have everything figured out. And actually, I just needed to know I just needed to have fun, to experiment. It was all part of the journey, and everything that I was doing at that point was leading to great things in the future.
Wow. And what is that one movie you don't mind watching again and again?
This is a tough question for me. I struggle to sit through movies even once. So to think of one that I could watch multiple times. Though I have just been through the Harry Potter series for a second time. So I quite enjoyed those.
That's good.
Nice. Over to you, Gerard.
Beautiful. And Emma, what do you love most about leading others?
I think it's unlocking leadership in them. So I get a real buzz from helping people just empower themselves and break through limits that are holding them back, that they've decided, actually, I don't want this anymore. So almost this sense of helping other people to step up as the leaders they want to be is such a part of the work I do in Burnout, actually. So yeah, that's what I love the most.
Beautiful. And what would you say is your most common leadership style?
I would say I am quite supportive, and I help people find the answers and the motivation within themselves. I don't generally find that the clients that work with me need that person who's holding them accountable and calling them out. Actually, the people I work with, it's more actually that kind of cheerleader role is what they need. That's what I needed, because I was being hard enough to myself and kind of hitting myself to make myself go harder. So I didn't need that dynamic, and I find that plays out with my clients.
I love that. And what would you say is the leadership lesson that stuck with you most?
That's whenever you're going through those tough times, it's happening for a reason, and there's a lesson to be found. I found seeing it that way kind of makes it feel less heavy at a time. And I almost think initially so if I look at entrepreneurial leadership, my expectation was I was going to get to this point where everything felt kind of calm and it was all going swimmingly well. And I don't think it's realistic. There's always those challenges, and it's just how you look at them is the bit that you can control.
I love that. So, Emma, one of the things we always like to do on this show is we like to use your connections and the people you know who you believe could add value to our community, because we have young professionals, we have senior professionals, and we have business owners who listen to this podcast. So who are the 3 people you believe we should actually speak to so that they can share their wisdom on this show?
So actually a coach that I partner with, we run a community together called Human Leaders. who is very different to me, but wonderful, is Cheryl Thompson. So she is the coach that will call you out on your BS, and she is amazing on the thing. Actually, I really respect about Cheryl is how she addresses issues of equality, diversity heads on. She is that person that goes into companies, holds up the mirror to them, and helps them move on from that. So she's absolutely fearless. She's immediately who comes to mind. Gosh, who else? So many people I can think of. There's a lady called Katerina who I'm doing a LinkedIn Live with on Tuesday, who is a TEDx speaker and wrote the book on how to hold successful meetings. She's incredibly interesting.
All right, that'll be the second one. And who is the third one?
Who else would be super good? So another amazing leader who comes from a more of a positive psychology perspective is a lady called Jenny Carroll, who, similar to me, made a transition from a very high-flying corporate career and then has set up her own business. She's amazing as well. I could probably give you a list of about 20 people, but they're who are coming to mind. There's also an amazing woman. They're all women. How interesting. Called Libby Kim Cameron, who is a neuroscience expert, and she's got a movement called Tame Your Brain, and she's just
beautiful,
awesome.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. So Coach Shilpa, you hear that? We've got 4 or 5 names.
Down. I've been writing
yes,
it down.
I'm sure you wrote those down, and we'll absolutely reach out to them and say, hey, look, your colleague, your friend and professional colleague Emma's mentioned how you're impacting the world. I would like you to add your voice on this podcast. Absolutely, we'll reach out to them. And so really, Emma would like to thank you for this elaborate discussions you've had with us. It's absolutely like riveting discussions we've had. I'm sure I will listen to this episode again and again, and I can see Coach Silver's smile says the same, right? And so one of the things that we always like to do here is that we know our guests have special guests. I mean, they have special gifts for the audience. And Emma, once again, would like to thank you for making this gift your guide to beating burnout. This is a gift that we are going to put below this episode, the link, so that our guests can listen to you and our members in this community, my community and Shilpa, your community, and also Emma, your community, can download this and really pass the message around. Like as you said, we do not have enough noise about burnout. We'd like the world to know about this condition that is helping, is affecting millions of people. So resources like this would like to thank you for making them available so that people can actually defeat burnout and become the best they possibly were created to be. And so I would like to ask Coach Shilpa to say just a few words to our audience, and then we call this summarize this.
Absolutely.
Ahead,
so first, before audience, I want to thank from my bottom of my heart to Emma for being here and sharing such beautiful experience without any inhibitions and straight from the heart talks, which touches my heart as well. And I completely correlate, like being my soul sister, as into we went through so many similar experiences, and people going through that, knowing that this happens, but there is a way out. That's such a healing message, because you say you are worthy, you are enough. If we just remind us of your beautiful words and start our morning with that, knowing that no matter where I am, there are people who are strong, who are talented, who are well equipped and have wonderful capacity to heal us, like Emma. It's only that you need to stretch your hands and reach out. That's what you can do. So thank you so much, Emma, for such an enlightening message. And this gives so much value to me and Gerald as well. because we as a professional experience some signs on the way, and it's always okay to tell us it's okay to experience everything. There is a way out, and way out goes to Emma Mathews.
Oh, very
So
good.
thank you so much, Emma.
Thank
And
you for
over
having
to
me.
you,
Yes, and so again, thank you, Emma, and really our audience, as you listen to this, to help you in your career growth and leadership skills, we invite you to look at some of the interviews that are coming, some of the guests that Emma has recommended here. We'll definitely reach out to them, and we will be informing you when they will be coming on the show, so that we also pass the message and we amplify their messages to you, so you
Yes.
can get value out of this. And we also ask you to subscribe and download and share this episode with your colleagues, with your family. And we also welcome you to join our private communities for leadership transformation, career transition, so that you really can be the person you're capable of being, because many times we sit on our capabilities, and would absolutely like to encourage you to keep growing and being the best person you are. And you can always reach out to us for consultations, for mentoring and guest speaking opportunities. And don't hesitate to send us an email at leadtalkpodcast@gmail. And especially for the gifts Emma is going to give, we have all the details. Her social media is here, her website is here, and everything that we feel is important for you to reach to her, and also to make recommendations to some of your colleagues and friends who may need her services. So we are absolutely grateful to you again, Emma Mathews, and we can't thank you enough, just like my colleague Shifa said. And we are ready to help you, and in any way possible even invite you a second time to dive into some other aspect of your career's work that we hadn't had the time to explore. Is there any last words you would like to talk to the audience?
Oh, just to say thank you for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I know the impact that hearing a conversation like this would have had on me 5 years ago. So absolutely an honor. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Dr. Gerald. So, dear beautiful audience, keep taking best care of yourself, and because you're worthy, you're precious, and you're enough. And see you next time. Till then, take best care. Stop struggling, start winning, stop following, and start leading. Thank you.
See you. Bye for now. Thank you.